When I was a kid, me and my friends would pretend we had superpowers. We would come up with some really cool ones too, but none of us wanted any of the powers on this list. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd, and this is part 2 of the top 10 superpowers that you would not want to have. And I have a challenge for you guys. I want you to come up with a really good power, but with a huge caveat that makes it hilariously unwantable. Like, for example, being able to move at super speed, but at the cost of being completely blind. See what I'm saying? But back to the list, starting off at number 10, we have Stone Boy. Dag Wentham is going all the way at the top of this list because his abilities are actually very useful, and I don't even know if I can say you wouldn't want them necessarily. Essentially, Dag is an alien from the planet Zwen, and his species has developed the unique ability to turn their entire bodies to stone, going into a sleep-like state that protects them from the harsh weather that their planet experiences for months at a time. The benefits of this are actually very many. You become basically unhurtable, you resist extreme weather, and you can pass as an incredibly realistic looking statue. But the big part of this is, while you are stone, you cannot move or do anything at all. So like, let's say you're being attacked by someone who very seriously wants to do you harm. Sure, you can turn to stone, but then all said person has to do is wait for you to turn back. Or just get something capable of breaking stone, because stone isn't exactly unbreakable, you know what I mean? Because of the lack of usefulness of this ability, he was rejected from the Legion of Superheroes and instead joined the Legion of Substitute Heroes. And his body was actually used to toss at opponents, so in that way, he was useful. Personally, I'd like this ability, and because DC felt bad for him, they eventually gave him the ability to control his ability a bit more, being able to actually move and to only transform part of his body into rock, which, yes, that is cool. But regular old turning to a movable stone? I don't know if I'd want that. What do you guys think? And at number 9 is Glob Herman. Robert Glob Herman's body is made up primarily of a bioparaffin, which is basically living wax. He's highly flammable, although resistant to that flame, and also resistant to most damage in general. He's also, for some reason, superhumanly strong and fast. I don't know how that works, but hey, I just work here. But you know what else? Because of his main amount of tissue being made up of this waxy stuff, he is basically pink and transparent, meaning you can see all of his bones and internal organs, and my god, it is a sight to behold. There is no way that Glob can pass for human, not even a little bit. He also doesn't wear clothes, so when he's around you, you 100% see him in all his pink globbiness. Almost any mutant who has a visible mutation gets things rough, but Glob's is by far one of the most drastically noticeable ones. But hey, he can fling bits of himself at people as a projectile, so that's kinda cool, I guess. Either way, I doubt a single one of you can give me a positive to looking like Glob. And at number 8 is Chamber. When you say out loud that Jonathan Starmore's power is that he is a being composed of pure psionic energy, able to manipulate biokinetic flame, and in possession of limited amounts of telepathy, then you'd be like, whoa, that's freaking awesome. I want that power. Then, I tell you that his body is just a shell for his psionic energy form, and when his powers first emerged, it completely blew a hole in his chest and lower half of his face, completely incinerating most of his internal organs, and meaning that he can't talk, eat, or drink, and that the wound was replaced by a constantly burning chasm of flame, then you'd be a little less inclined to say how great this power is, wouldn't you? Are you a foodie? Well, too bad, no food for you. Do you like the taste of beverages? Sucks to suck, bucko. There was even a point after his powers emerged and blew a hole in his face and chest that Chamber was depowered, meaning that he had to be kept on life support, and it was one of the most horrifying scenes I have ever seen in a comic book. No thanks, I'll pass. And at number 7 is Spore. Spore, or Andrew Graves, is honestly a bit of a tragic story. He's got 2 mutations, the first of which would be that he is covered in long brown hair or fur, and he also may have been given animal-like abilities, but that's not really confirmed. This unfortunate appearance caused his father, who was an absolute garbage human being, to blame his mother for their mutated child, and he caused her death using paint thinner. His dad forced Andrew to eat garbage, and when he finally grew up, Andrew had a super intense hatred for not only humans, but for himself as well. But Spore's secondary mutation was probably his namesake. He could release mood-altering pheromones which cause people to become incredibly more aggressive. Now, he could direct this aggression at specific targets, which is arguably kind of useful if you enjoy making people fight each other. But then again, you may be a psychopath if that's the case. But Spore wouldn't do that. Because he truly, absolutely hated himself, he would leave the aggression uncontrolled, hoping that the aggression would be directed at him as well. It does really make me wonder what Andrew would have become if he had a loving family, but considering he didn't, and so his powers were only ever used to harness people's aggression, then I have to say that it's a power you really shouldn't want to have. Number 6. Ice cream. Now, I saw some people mention Soft Serve, who has the ability to poop ice cream, and that does not sound like a bad one to me, I gotta say. I'd love that. Free ice cream whenever I want, sign me up. Forge even tried her ice cream once and said it was the best damn ice cream he'd ever had. So yeah, I'd take that. But another mutant who has ice cream powers who I would not want to be is Ice Cream. Some of you suggested him as well, and this one I can get behind, but it depends on a few things. If the amount of ice cream I turn into is exactly proportionate to my own body weight, like if I'm 150 pounds, do I turn into a 150 pounds of ice cream? Or can I generate more ice cream that I can actually get to enjoy? Also, he has turned into a banana split, complete with the banana and everything, so does that mean I can turn into any ice cream related foods? If I can't produce extra ice cream, then I would hate to have this power, because not only does that mean I can't enjoy the ice cream, but also people and animals, especially small children, will try to eat me and it will affect me. Not only that, but ice cream was defeated by the temperature in the danger room being really cold. I live in Canada, I'd be screwed. He was also eaten by a clown, and that is terrifying. Number 5. Forget-Me-Not. Forget-Me-Not is a mutant with the incredibly unique ability to be in a state of constant existential superposition. This basically means that Forget-Me-Not is more like Forget-Me-A-Lot. Whenever he is not in direct eyeline of another person, everything about him, from his presence to any memories that involve him, just completely disappear. And that's not only from things that are alive. When he is caught on camera, it doesn't even register on the footage or picture. It just leaves a big, noticeable distortion, which does give people a clue that he did exist, but they still can't remember that he's the one who made that happen. The same thing goes for if he uses things, so when he uses toilet paper, you obviously see that the toilet paper had been used, which would make him a perfect excuse for when someone gets mad when you don't change the toilet paper roll once it's empty. Just saying. His interactions with people do leave them with gaps in their memory, which some telepathic characters can pick up on, and leaving reminders for yourself about Forget-Me-Not does also help, which is what Charles Xavier had to do when Forget-Me-Not was a member of the X-Men team for 6 years and no one knew about it. Although, it would be an incredibly sad life to live. You could get away with a hell of a lot, so for someone who is okay being completely alone, it's kinda cool, but still. A really great quote for him goes, "It's better to do something that matters and not be noticed than the other way around," which is both sad and kinda really inspirational for just him. And number 4 is Rogue. Rogue is an incredibly popular member of the mutant community and the X-Men, and as such, a lot has changed with her character over time so that she doesn't really qualify for this list anymore, but for argument's sake, we are going to talk about the classic version of Rogue and her abilities. Primarily, she can absorb the abilities, psyche, and memories of anyone who she comes into skin-to-skin contact with. This is actually incredibly useful and is a huge boon in a world full of superpowered beings. One of the biggest times she did this is when she permanently gained the super strength and flight powers of Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers. But her abilities come with a huge drawback. The skin-to-skin contact will cause a person to be rendered unconscious. This was completely out of her control. Famously, the first time she discovered her abilities was when she kissed her boyfriend at the time. This inadvertently caused the poor guy to be put into a coma, one that he never woke up from. He stayed in a coma for 10 years, eventually just passing away. Although it isn't confirmed that her powers are lethal, she has put people into permanent vegetative states, and that's just not something you'd want to be able to do for yourself. Not voluntarily, at least. It's the same as not being able to touch anyone, and it makes life incredibly difficult unless she comes into contact with someone who can resist her abilities. And in our real world, that just doesn't exist. Number 3, The Thing. Now, I saw a lot of people bring up The Thing in their suggestions, and I mean, okay, Okay, let's talk about this one. I think there are a lot, and I do mean a lot of upsides to being the Thing. He's got incredibly durable rock-like skin, musculature, bone structure, internal organs, and soft tissue, making him incredibly difficult to hurt, with adamantium being one of the only things that can actually hurt him. His strength has become so impressive over time. He is consistently referenced as a rival to the Incredible Hulk, although that is debatable. He has incredibly increased stamina and lung capacity, sensory adaptation, and he does not age, all of which are powers you probably would want. But there are also a fair share of downsides. Ben Grimm is basically an oversized rock monster. Apart from making him stand out in a crowd and the fact that he is treated like a monster by some people, his sheer size makes using everyday appliances and objects extremely difficult. It's basically a handicap. But more than that, his rocky skin has robbed him of his feeling of touch. Not only can he not feel objects, but like people, he can't fully appreciate a hug. That just makes me sad. So yes, there are tons of upsides, but being turned into a monster with no feeling is a fate most people would not want. Luckily, thanks to his serum, he can turn back into a regular guy one day a year, and he does have one of the most loving and caring families in the Marvel Universe, the Fantastic Four. And at number 2 is Crazy Jane / Legion. Both Crazy Jane from DC's Doom Patrol and Marvel's mutant David Haller, or Legion, both have a very unique ability. They both have access to a large degree of different abilities, but every ability is attributed to a personality in their head, as both of these characters have dissociative identity disorder. Do I think the idea of being able to switch to different powers whenever you want, if you have control over it, is cool? I think so. But anyone who actually wants to give themselves a mental disorder is incredibly arrogant of the negative side effects of such a thing. Having a mental disorder is not something you want. It's not cool, it sucks. It's a problem, not a superpower that people sometimes spend their entire lives trying to cure. But then you add the fact that some of these different personalities have powers that can actually hurt people. And then you add a whole other level to this thing. Now, sure, these characters are heroes, and more often than not, they use their abilities to help people, but it's not always as simple as that. All I'm saying is that you should not want to have dissociative identity disorder. End of discussion. And finally, in at number 1 is Red Mask. This may be one of the absolute worst powers to have in terms of trying to live a normal life. Red Mask is an Animal Man villain from DC Comics, and he probably has one of the saddest stories from the publisher. In 1945, Red Mask, whose real name is never told to us, came into contact with a meteor that gave him the power of Death Touch. This basically means any living thing that he touches dies. Ben Grimm, he can't feel anything, but this guy literally is not allowed to touch anything because he will kill it. It didn't take long for Red Mask's wife to leave him, and after that he became a villain. Now I will say, he has the potential to become one of the most deadly villains, only he's literally just so depressed he doesn't even have the motivation. He was partnered with a villain called the Veil, but then the Veil's powers drove the guy insane and he was locked up in Arkham Asylum. His story in the Animal Man comics basically follows him getting a lung disease and then releasing an army of easily defeatable robots on the city of Miami, and then throwing himself off of a building. Now, in real life, I can't imagine any sane person who would want this. You can't have romantic relationships, not to mention kids, no pets, no plants, you can't shake someone's hand, you can't hug anyone, you can't even give or receive a high five. I think this is the worst of the worst. And that's the end of the line, friends. I've been Adam Andrews. I hope you guys enjoyed watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'll catch you on the flippy flop. Peace out, nerds.